Davida.
We're the two Pilates chicks, and we're coming from our two Pilates chicks studio. Ta-da!
Yay!
Yay! And again, we have no idea. We should probably pick some theme music, maybe.
A specific.
One's the same. I don't know. It's kind of fun to just change it up. But today, it's kind of a continuation of our podcast earlier this season, season 5. Because this is season 5, episode 16. Almost missed out on that. But we had one on building your client session, but I feel like we pretty much talked mostly about newer clients.
Yeah, we ended up gearing it more towards new clients, like first-time client sessions, new and newer clients, where they've been with us for a shorter period of time and what we're doing to build their sessions. And then we got
a request from our friend Kimberly in Texas, who's a teacher, who's been teaching like us a very long time. And she's like, could you talk more on the long-term client sessions? So here we are, long-term clients. And what did we decide? What did we decide was a long-term client?
So we wanted to kind of define like what makes a client long-term. Mm-hmm. And so what we decided was somebody that's been with us for multiple years.
Yeah.
Because we think somebody that's been coming to us for like within 1 year, that's still a newer client. You're still getting to know them and you're still maybe building them through some of the foundations if they've never done Pilates before. And, you know,
it takes a while.
It takes a while. And so a long-term client is someone that we've had for a long time, that we know very well. They know us. We know them. We know their tendencies.
We've watched their children grow up and go off to school. Because we're talking like you and I both have clients that, you know, over decades.
A decade, yeah.
And that's a long, and you go through so many things, not only with them in their personal life, but in their Pilates, because we'll talk about how everything changes.
Everything
in terms
changes.
Of getting older and
and so
dealing with things.
Yeah, and it's someone that we've been with them through a lot of things. They've seen us change too. Like I have clients who have been with me through getting engaged and married and you know everything. Yep. So it really it's a relationship that we're building, and that's one of the things that I think is important with long-term clients, to remember that it's both about the Pilates journey and that, but also the relationship on the personal level. And as we were talking before, we were talking about how we don't want that personal level to become coffee time chat.
No.
We still want Pilates involved, but we also don't want to overlook the fact that this is a relationship.
Right. And I like that we're talking about this, because I tell my students all the time, you know, footwork is not coffee chat. It's not about hearing about their day, because that's not what we're talking about, building a relationship. It's not like they're coming in, oh, last night, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, you know. It's not that. But, you know, I mean, and I don't know, maybe you have too, but I've had clients that have lost their spouse. And then they're coming back into the Pilates, and it's like this emotion that you're going with them through because they've lost somebody. So it's kind of gearing everything and keeping that client and that relationship through all of these even emotional hardships that life throws at us.
Yeah, definitely. And emotions on all spectrums. I mean, people get happy, new grandkids and then they lose somebody, and some people move. I mean, it's life, right?
It's
life. So we're going through this with them. And so it is important to not forget the Pilates side of it and become like only friends.
Yes.
And it's important to not
that will
forget,
not keep a long-term client.
Yeah. But it's also important to not forget that this is a relationship you're building personally, and especially with these one-on-one sessions, we're not just going through a group class.
Right.
So the cues and how we choose to talk to them, we want it to be on a human level, not just shouting cues at this person that's in front of us.
Not just directions.
Yeah.
Or, you know, instruction. So I think, like, if you think about, okay, this long-term client, you've got this relationship with them, and we kind of talked about that relationship in terms of them feeling kind of heard and kind of safe with you, so that then you can move them and continue to keep them challenged and growing. So even when they are in those hard times, or things are more challenging, or they've had a bad day and they come in and they're all riled up.
Yeah.
got it. And then just, oh, I hear you. I get it. So maybe we need to like just breathe today. Maybe we need to like move slower today. Maybe we need to find a pace and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Like, and so that is something that really retains long-term clients when they come in. Even if they're not like saying, oh my God, this happened, but you can
see and feel it.
You can feel it. Maybe they say one or two things, but you can feel it in their body. You can see it in their body. And so, you can say, I'm sensing like this from you. Like, let's like come on the mat and start breathing. Maybe they're really riled up and need to decompress and like take it down.
Yep.
But maybe there's somebody
to get it out.
They need to get it out. They need to get moving. So it really depends on the day and the person. But that I think pairing what you see and hear from them with what you're giving them makes them feel really heard and safe and supported. Yep. And that retains a client for a long time.
Well, and also it's not admitting, you're acknowledging, that's what I was looking for. You're acknowledging how they are in this moment, whether it's their feelings, the energy that you're picking up on, their frustration, whatever it is. You're acknowledging it, and just by them feeling that acknowledgement and going, you know what I feel like you need today? This is where we want to go. Mm-hmm. And then they're like, oh, she's going to take care of me. Yeah. This is going to be good. I'm going to be okay. And that's going to keep that relationship growing and, making it where they feel they can come in, even if they're having that horrible. They're like, I knew I would come in and I knew you would make me feel better.
Right. Like they want to come in because they know they will leave in a better space in some capacity. And honestly, if you think about it, there's not really that many places that people have.
Not in a workout session.
Yeah.
Especially.
And just in general, like.
Because it's a very non-judgmental. We were kind of talking about when you go out with a friend and start your, blah, 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 blah. And then the friend's always going to have an opinion. Yeah. Always. And we don't do that.
Yeah. Like the friend might know your other friends. So if you're like bouncing this bad work day or whatever off a friend, they have opinions. They know the people that, so we're kind of that third party perspective. But with these long-term clients, we also know them. And so we're giving this support that they really don't get in other places.
No. It's a gift we have.
Yeah.
We get, not have. It's a gift we get.
It's a special relationship where we can really feel like we're helping people, not only physically, but also just emotionally, like in general.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like talking about getting that into the energy of the client and maybe also giving them kind of tools to kind of understand, like you talked about, some days it might be, oh, we need to like breathe and calm down, or no, we need to go with this. And so one thing we've talked about and I learned from my work with Kara was that little tension dial inside your body and giving the client that tension dial to go, let's turn that tension dial down and kind of like just kind of be more fluid and flow, or let's turn it up a little bit and get, in with it. Whatever it is you can give them to kind of give them some control too.
Yeah. And that does give them a little bit of control. That is kind of like a mindfulness technique almost to use along with the workout, which is a very effective tool in getting tension and stress and anxiety out of the body, regardless of what that's about. Yeah.
What do you think? So we've got this kind of relationship with them, so that's very important, and it changes and it grows, and you go through life with that client. But also, it's like, when you talk about building their session, like in a normal situation, there's a lot we can do without feeling like you said, we want to challenge the client. It's not entertaining the client with new exercises. Yeah. So it's kind of like understanding, how do we plan this session each time for this client that's been coming for 5, 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one of the most important things in terms of session building for this long-term client is we're not here to entertain them and to constantly throw new things out at them in order to keep them from that big fear we all have of having our clients get bored. And so
it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. We're personalizing things for them. It's okay to repeat things. You have to repeat things. We've talked about that before. And so, yeah, it's this idea of challenging them in some way with each session.
And that doesn't mean they have to flip on the Cadillac and hang upside down. We're talking about a challenge, just, it can be a basic thing.
Yeah, very, very basic. And the challenge point is what it is as a challenge for them.
Right.
So it's not
on that day.
On that day, yeah. So whatever that might be, like maybe somebody is very athletic, but the day they come in, they're very imbalanced, and the challenge is really just like finding
that balance.
A balance point. that
is
the challenge for the day.
Yeah.
And so similarly to any session, like kind of building up through the session to get to some sort of an exercise that
like there's a thread you're going through the whole.
Yeah.
And they can feel it and see it and understand it.
Yeah. And whatever
these random things you're throwing at them.
Yeah. I mean, and it can be whichever theme of building a session works for this individual teacher. What their thing is like, okay, if you think about we're starting with a warm up, then we build some more compound exercises, then we do like a big thing, and then we cool down, or whatever way in which you block your sessions. But kind of building up towards something that feels like a challenge, and then being like, wow, look what you did.
I had a client this week, and she came in, and I've taught her since I've been here. So what? It'll be 5 years. Oh my God. So she's a long-term client, but she came in and I was watching her move, and I said, wow. She's like, I know I feel powerful today. So I'm like in my head going, oh, there's our challenge point, right? Powerful. And so she always said, well, I can't do push-ups. I don't do push-ups. I can't do push-ups. And guess what? We did a push-up that day.
There you go.
There you go. So she was just like, oh my gosh, I did a push-up. So it's kind of even something as simple as, just them saying, oh, I'm here today. And you're like, oh, we're going to take that path. We're going to go with it. And it's like listening to them in that respect too, whether they feel powerful or, oh, my shoulder's feeling good, or this is going on, or I can't think, or whatever it is.
Yeah. And it's, and that is just, it goes back to that's that relationship that we're nurturing, in any way, whether it's building up to that challenge point, or just listening to them, what they need to kind of vent out for a moment. Either way, personal side, Pilates side.
But kind of asking them it's asking them what they're feeling, what they're going through, what they're needing.
Yeah.
And not what we need.
Yeah. And it just goes back to that. It's not about,
it's not about us.
Yeah. And that's actually one thing that I think a lot of teachers think, that if you have a long-term client, people have this idea that they're supposed to be getting to this achievement of becoming this perfect Pilates practitioner.
Like the perfect swan, the perfect teaser.
Yeah. And that if this client that you've been teaching for a long time can't do those things or get to those points, that you're not teaching them well or you're not a good teacher. And that's just not true.
No.
Because not everyone's ever going to be able to do this, that, or the other thing necessarily. And so just because you had a client for a very long time doesn't mean they will be able to do something in particular. But that's why we're saying like building up to a challenge point for them, whatever their challenge is for that day.
And if you think about it, it's like no one's going to go out in the world and go look to their friends. Look, I can do this teaser. It's like, because it's not about the teaser. And like for her, it wasn't really about the push-up. It was like this moment of her understanding how her shoulders were working and this was happening. And oh my God, I can feel this happen. Because it wasn't like, and that's also with that relationship with your client, is you're giving them enough information so that they can go, oh wow, look, I did this because of the work we've done of this connection and this happening and that, instead of like,
that it's all coming together.
It's all coming together.
We've built to that. And it's like, it's a mutual celebration, because it's like, we're excited for them and they're excited for themselves and they're excited that you helped them get there. So it's like
that circle of love.
Yeah. And that is also a very shared experience, which keeps them coming back too. Because it's like, look how excited I am for you. Look what you just did.
Look what you just did. And they're like, oh my gosh.
And if they, like, even if somebody can't do even one push-up. Maybe
Right.
they held their first plank, or they
Exactly.
just loaded onto their arms.
Or they did like the Kathy Grant, just like a little lazy active
Shoulder
cat, and they felt their
movements.
shoulders and
Yeah.
go, oh, I feel this connection now. I understand.
Actually, that just the other day, one of my clients, who is not a long-term client yet, but she has been very regular for a while now. And we just got her to feel that shoulder shrug connection that she could not find before. And she was so excited. And,
See, and
that was our point for that day.
Yeah, it's just so, it's like the simple, it doesn't, that's what when we talk about, they don't need to hang upside down. They didn't need to do all these new, but if you keep going back to the foundations, if you keep going back to these things and drilling these skills in them, when it gets to like something like shoulder shrugs, where they're like, oh my gosh, I'm moving in this way that I haven't been able to before.
Yeah, you found a new connection, you found a new movement pattern. And we had, for that client in particular, we had gone that path that day because she had mentioned something about where her shoulder tips and how she, for years since she was a kid, felt like her posture was affected because of the way the shoulder went because of, and she told me this little story about why she thinks that was. And I was like, okay. And like, we just kind of
love those moments.
ended up going that way. And it was so cool. She was like, oh.
But I love when the client gives you information of what needs to happen that day.
Yeah. And that is really important because if we aren't there listening to them and really present in the moment with them, we'll miss that. We'll miss those moments.
Yeah. Which in my opinion won't build that relationship, won't maintain that long-term client.
Exactly. Yeah.
And another thing, if you want to think about long-term clients, we talked about that challenge point, getting them to feel it, is even just going back to the foundations and then getting into the work and changing the rhythm, changing the flow and the pace.
Yep.
So it's almost like I say, to pick up the pace where you feel like you're going to fall off that cliff, but you're able to like maintain and be there.
Yeah.
Because then it's moving differently. They've changed the pace. They've changed the flow or the rhythm of it.
Yeah, I think actually I don't know which episode, but we did mention
One of them.
something. We have mentioned that before about the different tools you can pick to change something for a person
Yeah, I remember that
without
episode.
actually like throwing a new exercise at them.
Yeah.
Where you can, in the same exact exercise, change the pacing or timing or a slight angle of movement or add a little coordination in some way. There's little things you can change that doesn't necessarily change the entire exercise, but
Doesn't change the purpose or the why you're giving it.
Changes how the body feels in it, and it changes maybe how they're thinking about it. Gives them something new to think about without just totally changing an exercise. And so that can be a great tool to use as well.
Because other things, you want them to be focused. And like you just said, thinking about it. And so when we teach, and we're not talking about classes, but we want them to be able to hear what they're kind of thinking about and doing and kind of connect with that way instead of just like la 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 in their brain.
Yeah.
La 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 la.
You can tell when someone's la la la
you can
because
tell,
you're
yeah.
like, no, I said your right foot,
Yeah.
and that is your left
Or
hand.
their eyes kind of go across the room like they're looking at the sky. Yeah.
And then they like snap back and go, oh, wait, what?
What? Yeah. Like when you're driving. We don't want them to be that driver that they're driving that route they drive every day.
And pass where
And they
they're going.
pass because they're like, you're like, wait, what? Yeah.
Where am I?
Where am I? Where it's all of a sudden you realize you're there and you don't know how you got there.
Yeah.
We want them to understand how they got there.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key too.
Yeah. And part of that is, as the practitioner, have like for us, being present with them. And really
we
being
got
focused with them.
We can't be driving the car not realizing the way we're going either.
We can't just be passing through. But I think like it is important, like with long-term clients, again, not just picking all these new things all the time, but sometimes coming back to those basics and revisiting very, very basic things.
Because they've changed.
Because their understanding has changed, their body connections have changed. They could feel something completely differently. I mean, we've been practicing Pilates for decades and we're still finding new things.
Yeah. Or it's like you get in, because it happened to me in my session the other day where talking about how you're feeling, and I was talking with my teacher and it's like, I'm so like, oh, like this. And she's like, okay, well, let's, go over here. So she had a whole, in her head, I'm sure, all planned out. And then we got in this position and she's She's like, what is going on? I was like, I feel like my jaw is like preventing me from moving. She's like, okay, we're switching gears. It's like, but I gave her that information. But I got in a position and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, I'm so tight here.
You were aware.
Without even being aware of it before. So I feel like with our clients, you get them somewhere and that's when they go, oh, this is going on. I feel this. And that changes for everybody.
Yeah.
So I don't know how we can't listen to the client.
Yeah.
And hear them.
It's a huge part of it. And it's really vital.
It's probably the most important thing in keeping that long-term client. And you were talking about foundations. Yes, we went back to foundations and just went back to some basic stuff. But even going back to basic stuff to kind of maybe rewind a bit too, to kind of refocus on it.
Yeah. And it's very calming, I find, to go back to some basics and like revisit those foundations. And that can also show somebody how far they've come.
Exactly.
Where you're like showing them like, okay, we're starting back. We're doing these things again. We've done these a million times. Let's think about this today for this exercise. But then also saying like, look how you did that.
Yeah.
Look at what you just, how that you lengthened there where you couldn't before. Or whatever it is. And that's like the idea of like goal planning with somebody where maybe their goals will change year to year, but kind of looking back at, okay, why did they come to Pilates in the first place?
You always have to remember that. And I like the goal planning. I do that every year with my clients where they have to pick their goal or what they want to achieve. But I think for us as teachers, if we forget why they originally came, then we've lost it.
Yeah.
Because we're not showing them, oh, I heard you. And this is what we're doing because this is what you came here for.
Yeah.
Instead of what we think they need.
Yeah. Because if we revisit why they initially came to us, then we're focusing on, like you said, what they need. And that shows that we're personalizing their journey for them.
Exactly.
And so it's nice to look back and see what their original ideas were. And then also see what their new goals are.
Yeah, because maybe, like you said, maybe when they go back to foundations or when they're doing something, they're realizing, wow, I'm so much better at blah, blah, blah. I want to now try that, to have this be not a goal of a teaser or a goal of a swan. Because if you're teaching your client the way we're talking about, they're going to choose things more movement. They're going to choose things more in connections. They're going to choose something that's long-term that's helping them in the real world.
Yeah, like building those...
Not a butt smaller.
Yeah. Building the movement connections, new understandings in the body. And just realizing when, or helping them realize when they have achieved those goals. Where, like we were saying earlier, we were chatting about when an older client especially, or anybody, like maybe takes a little trip, like as in like they trip over something, but they right themselves and they catch themselves, or maybe they kind of fall but they don't really get hurt, and they're like,
they don't fall as much impact.
Yeah. And they're like, I found my balance more easily. I like caught myself because of Pilates and those sorts of things. Or, oh, look, I couldn't reach up into that cabinet before, and now I can without any pain. Those sorts of things in the real world, but then also in the studio, when we see them achieve something, when we say back to them, like, look what you're doing. Look what you just did 6 months ago. You couldn't.
I had a client who was a plastic surgeon. He retired and moved up the Hamptons, I think. Anyway,
nice.
Some fancy place. But he one day came in and said, I realized I was pouring my coffee different because I was teaching him about where he's moving, because he's a surgeon, a plastic surgeon. So he was like this the whole time with just his wrists, right? And so we were doing a lot of full body, plus he played golf. And he realized when he was pouring his coffee that he wasn't just going from his wrists. He realized, oh, I'm pouring my coffee different.
That arm-back
connection.
Wow.
And he was like, huh.
Interesting.
I know. It's like but it's just like, a normal everyday thing that all of a sudden Pilates is like, you know what? You need to move this way.
Yeah.
Because it's safer for your shoulder. It's safer for this and that.
Yeah. And that's what is really cool about the long-term clients is that we can see them on that journey and see them make those changes.
Because those do not happen overnight.
No, that's the long
Lots
term.
of long term.
Yeah. That takes the time.
It's like, it's always, if you think of long-term clients and this can go to the short term. And you and I've had so many discussions about this. I talk about with the students all the time is like, we're not going to fix the client in that hour.
Right.
It's years of working with a client, years of movement patterns. And so to sit there and go, oh, I need to fix that shoulder. It's like, it's not going to happen.
Not going to happen right now.
And it's full body. So we need to see what else is happening and going on. But yeah, it's like this, that would not have been something in year one. He would have been like, I'm pouring my coffee different.
Right. Sometimes in the first year, people will notice like, oh, I'm a little bit more aware of how I'm holding myself as I move through the day, or I'm a little more aware of how I'm putting my bag on my shoulder, or, you know, those little things, just being more physically aware. But yeah, those certain things where you're like, I found my arm to back connection. Like, that takes time.
And I think that's also letting that client know, like letting your long-term client know that this is a journey, that, you know, we're continuing to learn, we're continuing to change, and this is all, you know, because it's like you have that long-term client and they're like, oh, you can even be teaching the order. You can even be teaching classical, traditional, or whatever. And they'll be like, oh, we've never done this before. It's like because they weren't ready, that they didn't have those concepts. So they're never going to get bored. There's so much work.
There's so much, and you can peel the layers back, go back to the basics, break certain things down.
Build the blocks.
Yeah, parts of exercises, hold an exercise, hold a position in a certain way. You know, there's so many different things. But I think in terms of the long-term client, the most important thing is how you nurture and build that relationship, listening to them.
Yeah.
And celebrating those small wins with them as they build towards those bigger wins.
Because they're going to be the ones that, like we talked about, are giving you the information to take them where they need to go.
Yeah. So, and then showing them or telling them, like verbalizing to them how you're seeing it. So you're like, it's not like hidden from them. So they know like, oh, like I heard you say this, so we're going to go this way because I want to do this. And how do you feel about this?
Yeah.
Like those things, like take them with you on the journey.
Because they have to feel like this is I had a client earlier this week, and we've done a lot to kind of open her up. And we don't talk about it, but she has meant, oh, I feel more open. I feel more this. And this has taken time. So I had her do some things that were normal things she wouldn't do. And at the end of the session, she said, I knew we were heading somewhere. I just didn't know where, but I could see that this kind of way we were going. I didn't know where, but I felt, so she knew I was taking her on this, and she could feel and see the connections of things. And that's what we want. And then she said she felt stronger, more lengthened, and more centered every time she comes to Pilates. And that's what we want.
Yeah.
It's when they leave, they feel these things that are empowering, these things that they know they're growing.
Yeah.
And benefiting from, instead of just, you know, oh, I'm, you know, doing Pilates.
Doing the 100 again.
Yeah, here we go. And they don't, because it's, if you think about foundations and the 100, it's like every time we do it, it's different. Yep. And you can, like you said, pick a different focus when you're doing it.
Yeah. Focusing on something different, whatever it is for that person. But yeah, just feeling that you're growing is really exciting, and that doesn't make people get bored.
And I can't think of any other kind of fitness workout where you get to see that in the same way.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something where if you're saying I'm lifting weights, and you can kind of see some progress, like, okay, I could lift 3 pounds, now I can lift 7.
But there's going to be a point where it's like, you can't lift anymore.
You kind of get to your point. And that's still exciting and that's fun. You're like, oh, look, I can lift 20 pounds now. But in Pilates, it's so qualitative instead of quantitative. And so I think that's why it's helpful to like verbalize and take your client on that journey with you, to let them know you see their progress.
Yes.
And they are progressing.
Yeah.
And that excitement about that again, you like share together is just so exciting. And that keeps them there with you.
And I think that's really, I mean, it's not like, it's kind of like we talked about in the building the client session, we talked more new people, is that there's no like formula. It's not like, oh, well, you give them this in terms of exercises, because everyone's different. But what you just said is really what is going to keep that long-term client. Yeah.
There's a general guideline that you can follow where it's like if you're going to go work out, you're not going to all of a sudden start jumping over hurdles. Like you're going to probably warm up towards it.
Let's hope so.
But within that outline foundational work, how you build a client session is so unique for you as a teacher, for that specific
unique
client,
is a good word.
For that day, so it's really about all these other little things that retain clients, that keep long-term clients interested, and that keep that relationship flourishing both with Pilates and with the teacher.
Yeah. Without that, it made no sense. So I think that, I hope that helps people.
Yeah.
Especially little Kimberly out there in Texas, who we adore. So who's our sponsor?
Our sponsor, C's Candies, who we are sponsoring and hoping to get some chocolate from.
And we do love C's Candy.
It is always in the studio.
On the studio. It's like, hello, there's that box. And do we have any other announcements? We have our workshop coming up, but I think when this comes out, we've already had it.
Yeah, this will come out after our workshop, but we have had our workshop.
It went really well.
It was fantastic. And we have new workshops coming up next year, which we'll announce, and building out our studio and other workshop and mentorship plans.
Yes, and you can catch us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Is that it?
Anywhere.
Check out our website.
Yeah, PilatesChicks.com.
Yep, PilatesChicks.com. But that was fun. And our next episode will be our last one of the year.
Bum, bum, bum.
Bum, bum. So enjoy your day, and thanks for listening. Bye. Bye.